Hey guys, Martin here. Another episode of We're Still Here, and I figured I'd do a reintroduction to people who may have just started joining us, because I've not really spent time to talk about what the series is about and for, or why it exists, period, for several dozen episodes, I think. So here it is. I was diagnosed with depression a couple, 2 or 3 years back now. Gosh, it sounds crazy to say it like that it's been so long, but it's a good crazy. It's the kind of crazy where I'm like, I'm still in this fight. I'm still good. I'm still rocking and rolling this long down the line, and it's been tough, but it's been easier with this, and that's why it exists. Is because the impetus for it was I did therapy, and I continue to do therapy, but group therapy specifically was a really helpful experience for me because it allowed me to share my experiences with other people. And in doing the sharing, I learned that, first of all, that I wasn't alone in these feelings and these experiences and these thoughts when I felt, and if you are going through depression or something similar, then you know that you feel very alone in this stuff. I mean, being a person, a lot of it, there is a lot of loneliness in there, and depression just multiplies it, magnifies it. But having group therapy made me realize this isn't something that I'm like lost, in the oblivion with, no handholds to guide me, that there are other people going through the same thing and other people who have been going through the same thing, some of them for several years. And in one sense, that's awful. But in another sense, it gives me hope because, to see them still trying and still fighting and still breathing is it's inspirational. It is. It really is. It helps. It helps a great deal. It helps heal. It helps you want to heal. And the thing that struck me the most was just hearing words coming out of their mouths that I had only thought existed up here, So I wanted to do something where I talked about my experiences with depression and encourage you guys to talk, not just to random people necessarily, but and I'm not saying that you guys are just random people, but I'm saying that, obviously me just talking out there into the ether is my way of dealing with it. But if you have somebody who's available, like a family member or a friend or a therapist, ideally, I think a therapist is I honestly feel therapy is one of the best ways to help you fight depression. I'm not going to say it's your best possible way, but from all my experiences that I've had, therapy has been a good bolster for me. It's definitely helped keep me. It's given me something to look forward to, and that's what I wanted to do with this series, which was give me something to look forward to when I'm in my worst moments. If I can just reach it, if I can just reach next Monday, then it'll be all right, But that's what this series is, and it's called We're Still Here, and we are still here. I hope even if you're not listening to this video or if you're not watching this video, that you're still out there and you're still doing okay. And that's just what I want to put out there is that feeling. I watched a film the other day called The Voices, and I'm sure if I'd done a little bit more research into it, I probably wouldn't have watched it because there was some rather upsetting content in there. It's if you've not heard of it, and it's fairly likely that you've not heard of it because it's kind of an underground movie. It's got Ryan Reynolds in it, who, while he's a name, he's not the biggest name in the world, especially in this movie. I don't think it even had a theatrical release, not a major one anyway. But it's about a guy, Ryan Reynolds, who has schizophrenia at the very least. He has a number of problems that he's dealing with, and he's off his medication for reasons that are explained in the movie, to the point that he's having long conversations with his pets, and he's struggling to see reality the way it really is. It all looks very pretty and colorful for him, but I guess that's kind of the thing that I wanted to discuss, was that how it struck me. It was I'm not going to say very close to home because I don't have schizophrenia. I'm not talking to my cats. At least I'm not talking to them and expecting them to talk back to me. But it was difficult to see somebody going through a a mental health problem and not be getting the help that he needs through reasons that are within the story of the movie that I don't want to spoil in case you are interested in seeing it. But he's not taking his medication, and that's what's causing him to have all these problems again, because he's supposed to be on his meds because that's what makes him see the world the way it's supposed to be. And there's this really kind of upsetting scene. There's one of the most haunting ones in the movie for me, which is where he decides to, at the encouraging of his doctor, he decides to go back on his meds, and instead of this bright, colorful, lively place that he sees the world as, he sees the world as just as it is, very dreary, very quiet and lonely and cold and dead. And it's a really upsetting scene. The movie is kind of a dark comedy, so I went into it expecting more, and this is always my mistake when I go into one of these movies, is I always expect more comedy than dark comedy, and that's my bad, because it's definitely more of a dark comment. It's a dark comedy, definitely on the darker side of the spectrum, but it was relatively entertaining. I thought Ryan Reynolds did a very good job acting. I thought his performance is the reason to see that movie. Not a lot of people think of Ryan Reynolds as a great actor. He's capable of great acting. Like if you've ever seen Buried, I think he's phenomenal in that, and he's good in this movie as well. The thing that really caught me, threw me for a loop, which is the actual thing I can kind of connect with this movie at the very least, not necessarily Ryan Reynolds' character, is that there's a suicide sort of that happens in the movie. There's an attempted suicide, and I've talked about this in the past on We're Still Here. I tried to watch the movie The Skeleton Twins, I think it's called, with Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader, and the very first thing you see of these characters is them both attempting to kill themselves. And I went into it knowing it was going to be more of I know they intended it to be more of a drama than a comedy, and apparently they were very surprised when people thought it was hysterical. Not the suicide part, obviously, but the movie in general. I didn't know going into it that it was going to flat out, brazenly show these characters trying to kill themselves, and it was upsetting to the point of me, having to stop what I was doing, and I hyperventilated for a while, and I sort of had a little mini breakdown where I had to gather myself for the next half an hour and really sort of settle down and remind myself that everything was okay, because it just hit so close to home. I've never directly attempted suicide, but the way that I would think about doing it, and it's an upsetting subject to speak about, and I do apologize if even me talking about it now is affecting you. So please understand that that's not my intention, and if you need to take time away from this video, please do. The way that I always thought about killing myself was being presented in these movies. There's only so many ways you could think about, I suppose, but it was just very unsettling to see it presented the way it was, and I was not ready, I have to say. And I wasn't ready when I watched this movie, The Voices, necessarily. I wasn't as bad. I just had to look away from the screen for a while. But I've had similar experiences in lots of films, actually. I went to see Ex Machina in the theaters the other year, which is fantastic, by the way. If you have a chance to see that movie and you like interesting, thought-provoking sci-fi movies, it's really good. But there's a scene, and it's not like it's an attempted suicide. I understood the context. But there's a scene where a character goes to the bathroom and starts cutting open his arm because he thinks he might be a robot. And he's not a robot, and he's not trying to kill himself. But seeing that happen, I couldn't breathe in the theater. I was crying. Marianne was next to me trying to convince me everything was okay, and tears were streaming down my face. it was kind of pathetic. But that's the reaction I had, and I wasn't upset at the movie. If I'd done research into these films, I would have known, and I would have probably. With the Skeleton Twins, I had no idea it was going to hit me that hard. But with these other movies, if I'd known ahead of time, having done research, I would have avoided watching them until I was in the right place mentally to deal with it. But I guess I'm not. This is how I react to this stuff. You know, I'm an emotional person. I'm very much, you know, I get very easily upset, even when I'm not, you know, dealing with suicide or something like that. I just get very easily upset over things in general. I cry a lot of the time, even before I was depressed. You know, I was very in touch with that side of myself, and that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just part of who I am. But you know, I have to wonder, you know, if I wasn't so emotional, would this stuff still affect me the same way? And if I wasn't depressed, would it still affect me the same way? I feel like it wouldn't. So I guess this was more of a talking point than anything. This We're Still Here is me talking about something that happened to me recently. And I guess it's my way of saying, if you're thinking of watching a film that, you know, is leaning towards the darker side, if you definitely make an effort before you watch something that has adult themes like, you know, depression or mental illness or stuff like that, you know, there's not going to be any triggering, you know, for lack of a better word, moments in that film. That's what I should have done. But having said that, I'm curious, you know, I want to ask you guys, and feel free to reply in the comments if you can, how do you feel when you see something like that presented to you in media? Do you feel that it's sensationalized and that it's just done for shock value most of the time? Or do you feel like it's important to have people be aware of people who have these problems? Because I have a feeling that with the Skeleton Twins, even though I couldn't finish that film, it shows them attempting suicide and then moving on and growing and learning that their lives are important and precious and they reconnect with each other. I imagine that's the kind of film that is. With the voices, I imagine the film, because I stopped watching it toward the end because it just kept going darker and darker and more depressing. I imagine that kind of film is just sort of bleak and is there isn't really necessarily, I could be judging it wrong, a message of hope there, and it just is sort of, I didn't feel like I got anything out of watching the violence that took place in it. And I'm not saying that violence in movies is bad and we should censor it or anything. I'm saying that I don't know what I'm saying. I guess ultimately I'm kind of upset that there's a lot of media out there that I can watch unknowingly with suicide presented pretty graphically, because that's something I don't know. It's something I'm going to have to deal with, I guess, at the end of the day, because it's out there. I don't know. I wanted to ask, you know, how you feel when you see it presented, because when I see it, especially in a, you know, when they don't hold back when they're presenting it, I feel kind of overwhelmed, and I feel like, you know, this is too much, and I wish it would stop. But yeah, how do you feel about that stuff? Well, that's it for this We're Still Here. I'm going to be recording a bunch more in preparation for a trip to Europe that I'm going to be taking next week, actually. I'm leaving first thing next week, and I'm looking forward to it. But as you know, if you've been watching these things, anytime I leave home to go on a trip, I'm always kind of a nervous wreck about it. But I'm sure I'll be okay. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to SunnyCon, which is in Newcastle upon Tyne in England. I believe the weekend of the 16th, I want to say. I could be wrong. I could be way off base. It's next weekend, I'll tell you that much. And today is the 7th of June. So whatever the weekend is after that, I believe it's the 16th. And I'll be there with Team 4-Star and Marianne Miller, my beautiful wife. And then I'm going to be taking a trip straight to Paris and then Germany for the following week. And it's going to be a good time. And if you can hear my dog coughing outside, she's probably chewing on something she's not supposed to be. So that's about as good a reason to wrap this video up as any. I'm going to be uploading a bunch of these before our trip, so look forward to those. But I'll be coming back toward the end of June, and I'll be ready to record more of these. Probably have a lot of stories about being in Europe and feeling the way I feel. But hopefully it'll be a good time, and I hope you're doing okay. You take care of yourself.